The New Orleans Saints kicked off their 2024 season with an absolute beatdown on the Carolina Panthers. We're going to talk about all the good, and trust me, there was a lot of good right here on the Straight Up Saints podcast.
You're listening to the Straight Up Saints podcast.
What is up, Houdat Nation? Welcome back inside another edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. I'm your host, Chris Rosvoglu, and as always, the Straight Up Saints podcast is brought to you by Scott Fickner. Injury lawyers who've been injured in any kind of accident, car, truck, 18-wheeler, or hurt offshore. Scott Fickner handles it all. You give him a call at 504-500-1111 for a free consultation. They'll always fight for the win. Like I said at the top, the Saints started off the season with an absolute flawless performance, 47-10 over the Panthers. It wasn't close. It felt over after the first quarter. Honestly, it felt over after the first two drives of the game. Derek Carr, 59-yard touchdown pass to Rashid Shaheed. Next possession for the Panthers, Bryce Young throws a ridiculously bad interception, and that was pretty much all she wrote. Saints were dominant in all three phases of the game, and we'll talk about all those. And as always, if you guys have liked these contents, these type of post-game live streams before, leave your comments, your thoughts. You could look ahead. You could look towards this game, whatever it may be, put it in the chat. I will bring it up later in the show, and we'll get your thoughts out here at Boo Crew Media. And if you do like this video, make sure to actually hit the like button. That definitely helps us out here at the channel, and we appreciate it. So I want to start off with who, for my money, was the most impressive player out there. And look, you can talk about a bunch of different guys that were impressive, but for me, I think this was a statement from him. Alvin Kamara. He was so freaking good today as a receiver, as a runner, setting the tone. Incredible. 15 carries for 83 yards and a score on the ground. Was also good as a receiver, 5 receptions for 27 yards. I believe it was his 50th game with over 100 yards from scrimmage. He got an awesome standing ovation from the crowd in New Orleans, and he absolutely deserves it. And I think for Alvin, look, there was a lot of talk going into this season, right? His contract situation still looms. He hasn't gotten an extension. And we know how rough last year was for him. And it wasn't really so much the player as it was the scheme. We talked about it how many times that Pete Carmichael's scheme was an absolute mess for New Orleans last year. And we didn't feel like they were able to put him in those great situations, whether it was to score or just make a play in general. I felt like Alvin Kamara under Pete Carmichael was used like Travaris Cadet. And you know what? I kind of feel bad that that's like kind of some shade towards Travaris Cadet, who used to play for the Saints, but that's how it felt. Instead of using Alvin as the guy, you used him as just another guy. And Clint Kubiak put that focus back on Alvin today. And there were so many run plays where I loved the concept, and I felt like you got him out in space, and you didn't just run him up the middle on 2nd and 10, which was a Pete Carmichael staple. So to have a new system that really highlights Alvin's skills, and you get to see, even if it's for a game, and I know it's a one-game sample size, but you get to see that Alvin can still be that lead guy in the backfield and just make plays, make players miss, run with a certain level of toughness. It's great to see. And speaking of toughness, I want to say that's a part of Alvin's game that I think is incredibly underrated. When we look at Alvin, we think about the elusiveness, the shiftiness to his game, the fact that this man can run over defenders and bounce off tacklers like it's nobody's business is what makes him such a thrilling player to watch. And I really, really appreciate that the Saints, who, yeah, there have been questions regarding this coaching staff, right? Regarding DA, regarding the way they operate the front office. When Alvin scores a touchdown and it gets called back from a holding penalty on Fuaga, who I thought for the most part played pretty well today. And I thought the O-line as a whole played pretty well today. And for them to run the football the way they did and finish this game with, a whopping 180 yards on the ground, obviously your O-line did their job. And I love the way they kind of had that mauling, mindset to get their hands dirty and move guys in the run game. I love that. But when Alvin's touchdown gets called back and you make it a point of emphasis to make sure he gets that touchdown back and you get that one to actually count on the board, players are going to appreciate that so much. And it might be a subtle storyline in a 47-10 victory, but stuff like that matters. And at the end of last season with the Jamal Williams touchdown and all of that controversy, to go out there, Alvin does his thing, and you make sure he gets his score, players appreciate that a ton. And I love the way the Saints handled that situation. And like I said before, I absolutely love the way Alvin played. He was sensational for the Saints. I also love the way Derek Carr played. I mentioned Alvin. Got to talk about Derek Carr, man. I know it's one game. I know people are going to say, well, small sample size. Sure. Say whatever you want. That's fine with me. I know that Derek Carr today proved to me he can play well in this Saints system, and he can be good enough for them to win games with, and to some degree win games because of. I thought Derek Carr played that well today. Didn't make any risky throws. 19 to 23. I mean, when you have 4 incompletions and 3 touchdown passes, you are doing something right. And Derek today looked like a very confident quarterback, didn't seem pressured at all, and he stood tough. And I mentioned it before, this game felt over in the first quarter, right? When he sits there and knows he's going to take a shot, but if he delivers that pass to Rashid Shaheed, it's a touchdown, and he makes that throw, fuck yes, that just feels good to see as a Saints fan, because last year we went through so much nonsense with Derek Carr. Well, it felt like he bailed on the pocket, or he did take some shots because the O-line was bad. And to go in there, be tough, make the throw, great throw, by the way. And then that was just a little bit of a sneak preview of what he was going to do the rest of the game. Crazy touchdown pass to Foster Moreau. And you could say it was risky, and it was risky, but Foster Moreau is probably the only one coming down with that. So you live with that throw. And then the throw to Juwan Johnson, beautiful ball placement. He was excellent all game long. And I think for Derek Carr, us Saints fans, if we're going to be loud with our criticism, and Lord knows we are loud, we should be loud with our praise as well. And when Derek Carr does what he does today, he deserves credit. Now, you got to build off this. You can't just beat up on the Panthers and the Saints go out and lose the next 4 games in a row. You can't do that. But you got to build off it, and you got to give them credit when it's due. And Derek Carr today, again, 1 game sample size. But you can't look at those stats and go, oh, they were fraudulent. Because there were moments last year where Derek Carr put up great numbers and they felt empty. Today's numbers almost don't do it justice when you look at the yardage and when you look at the overall stat line. But 19 to 23, like I mentioned, that is the blueprint for the Saints. And I said it coming into this game. If you could run the football well and take pressure off of Derek Carr and make him feel like he has to be a complementary piece and not the main attraction, that is going to be a good version of the Saints, and that is exactly what we saw from Derek Carr. So I got to give him props. I thought he was outstanding today, and I can't wait to see if he can build off this. And there's going to be better defenses than Carolina's. It's going to be worse. I think Dallas next week will be a better defense than Carolina's. I think Philly 2 weeks after is going to be worse. So I'm excited to see what Derek Carr does. And it's going to be a challenge. Not every game is going to be perfect. And I think for Derek, that toughness mindset is what he needs. You know, I said before, I wish that he slid on that play in the second half where he's running, but he looked like a guy that had a message to deliver. And whether or not it was to us fans or to, the national media, I don't know who that message was for. And frankly, I don't care who that message was for, because if Derek Carr's balling, that's all I care about as a Saints fan. That to me is what really, really matters. So I'm going to get into special teams real quick, and then we'll get to fan Q&A, which is your opportunity to throw whatever you guys want out there. So I need to talk about special teams, though, because it is the unsung hero of football. It is what wins you or loses games sometimes more often than we want to give it credit for, because it's special teams. It's not that exciting. It's boring at times. But man, the Saints special teams today was a difference maker. And it might not have mattered for today's game in the grand scheme of things, because Derek played well and Alvin played well, and the Saints defense made Bryce Young shit his pants more times than you'd like. But the special teams unit for the Saints, outstanding. And you kind of set the tone from the jump. Blake Grupe in the kicking game, I mean, what was that today? That was phenomenal. 4 of 4, 2 50-plus yard field goals, 1 from 57. He was outstanding. Rashid Shaheed had an exceptional return that honestly I thought he was going to turn into a house call, just gets tripped up. Saints end up scoring a touchdown a couple plays later anyway. But great return from Shaheed. Saints look to get good returns all day long under the new kickoff rules, which they didn't get to do a lot because the Panthers weren't exactly scoring. Juwan Johnson blocking a punt in the second half. Saints did it all. They absolutely did it all. Now, Matthew Hayball, only had 2 chances to punt, but you know what? That's what we want as fans. We don't want to see the punter out there. When you're not seeing the punter, you're doing something right. And even for him, out of his 2 punts, 1 was pinned inside the 20. Good enough for me. I thought this special teams, and again, I'm giving them the credit because no one really cares about special teams. No one really talks about it enough. But in this particular instance, I really think that this could be a calling card for the Saints in those tight games when you know that you have a special teams unit that can actually do some damage. So I'm excited to see going forward. But Darren Rizzi, the way he coaches that unit, phenomenal. And I think the 3 main coaches for the Saints, Dennis Allen, Clint Kubiak, Darren Rizzi, They all deserve a ton of credit because all three of their units did their job. DA's defense made Bryce Young look terrible. And you know what? Maybe Bryce Young just is terrible, but he looked especially bad today. Clint Kubiak's offense was humming from the get-go. We all know that. And then Darren Rizzi, I just mentioned before, special teams made such a great difference. So before I get into any comments that you guys have to make, and we will definitely get into them, I want to get a quick word from one of our sponsors of this show, Standard Mortgage.
Buying a house is one of the largest financial investments you'll ever make. That's why you need the experience and the support of the Standard Mortgage team. Whether you're looking to purchase, refinance, or consolidate debt through a cash-out refinance loan, Standard Mortgage will help you every step of the way. For the last century, we've grown to 7 locations across Louisiana, but we've always called New Orleans home. While others are busy raising your rates, we're focused on raising the standard. Visit us today at stanmore.com, STANMOR.com. NMLS number 44912, equal housing lender.
Once again, thank you to Standard Mortgage for being part of the program. And as I mentioned before, that's going to take us to our fan Q&A presented by Sunshine, your hometown John Deere. Nothing runs like a deer. So let's get into what you guys have to say. And hopefully it's a lot that you guys have to say because, man, that was a fun one. We're going to start off with a quick hoodat from Nola Gang 09. Fred says, yes, the Panthers are that bad, but the Saints might actually be that good. Last year, they would have won this game 17-10. Couldn't agree more with you, Fred. Couldn't agree more. I talked about this during the halftime show. The Saints last year struggled against Tyson Bagent and the Bears for a little bit, struggled against Tommy DeVito and the Giants for a little bit, struggled against Bryce Young and the Panthers for a little bit. They played bad teams, and they struggled in those games. And again, 1 game sample size. This could be the best game they play all year. I understand that. I've accepted that reality. It is possible. But to go out there and stomp your opponent out the way they did, that's what you want. You know, and if we're all going to say, well, you're only playing bad teams, fine, but I want my team to go out there and kick the shit out of a bad team, and that's exactly what the Saints did today. And if they're going to contend this year, take care of your division. You take care of your division, all the other stuff will settle itself out. So you got 6 division games, 1 game is already down, and you beat the heck out of that team. And mind you, the Falcons lost today. So depending on what happens with the Buccaneers game, you can start off week 1 with the Saints being 1-0 and everyone else in the South being 0-1. And wouldn't that be a treat for us fans? And it kind of feels like you buy a little time. So I agree with you, Fred. Last year, the Saints win this game, but they make it close. They make it frustrating. They make us want to scream and shout that they got to fire everyone in that building. Today, we're talking about who needs extensions and who deserves a statue outside because that's how well they played. It wouldn't even have been fun. It wouldn't even have been a fun win if it was a game like last year. Yeah, to your point, absolutely, totally agree. Forgive says, I ain't trying to hear nothing. People were saying the Saints going to be 4th in division. We don't care because it's the Panthers when people like Colin is saying they're going to beat them. Yeah, that's what gets on my nerves, right? And this, by the way, do not expect the national media to give the Saints any love tomorrow. They're going to talk about certain games that were fun, and there were a lot. They'll focus on the Jaguars and the Dolphins, maybe talk about Sam Darnold and the Vikings. They're not going to talk about the Saints because the Saints to them aren't exciting. I kind of like it that way. Go under the radar. You go into week 2. You go into Dallas. If you beat Dallas, you are going to force people to have to talk about you. They'll have no other choice. They're not going to talk about the Saints on Monday. They're not. They're going to say the Panthers are bad. They got a Bryce Young decision to make, and they're not going to talk about Derek Carr looking good and Kamara shining in Kubiak's new system. They're not going to talk about all that. And that honestly is fine with me because those people are the same ones, to your point in your comment, when Colin Cowherd comes out and says the Saints are going to be 4th in the division and the Panthers look much better than them, just admit you don't watch football, at least not on that scale. You're not watching NFC South football, that's for sure, because anyone that watched the Panthers last year would have known this team was pretty much running back the same unit. They didn't get much better. John says, we're Commanders fans for the next 4 hours. Let's go. Yeah, and we'll see what Jaden Daniels does too. So it's a little bit of a win-win for Saints fans, right? You root for the Commanders because you want them to take down the Buccaneers because you want your division rival to lose, and you got to root for former LSU quarterback Jaden Daniels in his debut, and we'll see what he could do. I mean, they're trailing 3-0 right now, but still early in that game. I'm looking now. Got 11 minutes in the first quarter. So Rachel says, is this what Chiefs fans feel like? Possibly. I mean, a little bit different because they have the luxury of knowing they're never out of a game because they got Patrick Mahomes, who it just seems like everything works perfectly for him. But you know what? For today, it felt like it. Fred says, so much to be encouraged about, but if this defense has turned the ball over like that, then we are going to win a lot of games. Couldn't agree more. The only reason I didn't bring up the turnovers, guys, and they were big. Don't get me wrong. The turnovers are key. The only reason I didn't bring up the turnovers is because Bryce Young's throws were so freaking bad. I don't know if you're going to get gifts like that all year. I mean, the throw to Will Harris was just a horrible throw. The pick by Jordan Howden, I tweeted it and I fully mean it. I said it with my chest. It looked like Jordan Howden was the intended receiver on that play. The intended receiver. And he's a safety for the Saints. So don't get me wrong, the turnovers are huge. I think the forced fumble was the big one for me that stands out. The sacks were important for the Saints, sacking Bryce Young 4 times. And that's how you know DA, I don't want to say had no respect, but no fear of Bryce Young. He was sending the blitz nonstop because he knew it was going to pay off. Forgive says, I know the Steelers defense is amazing, but where are the Falcons' weapons everyone said they had, and their O-line was shook from Watt? I always thought the Falcons' offensive weapons are a little overrated. Maybe I'm bugging on that. I know Bijan's talented. I know Kyle Pitts is talented. I know Drake London's talented, but like they don't have like 49ers type of weapons, right? At least in my opinion, they don't have the Dolphins type of arsenal of receivers. So I think it's a tad overrated, that group. A talented group, but a tad overrated. Aaron says, Chris, we finally got an OC. Yes, we do, Aaron. Yes, we freaking do. His name is Clint Kubiak, and we're finally seeing some modern day football, and we deserve it as fans because we went through hell last year with what we watched. Bayou Boys 504 says, where are the Carr haters at now? Hey, look, like I said before, us as Saints fans, we got to give Derek Carr his credit when he plays well. If he stinks, we'll talk about it, and we know it'll be talked about. We got to give him his credit when he plays well, and he played very well today. And there was a little bit of a swagger to him that you saw at the end of last season. And I said, if it carries over, that is a key for this year. If the Saints are going to shock people and go 10-7, which, by the way, you start off 1-0, now you only got to go 9-7 to get to that mark. Makes life a little bit easier. That's a key. Derek Carr overachieving, defense playing lights out football. And I hope that is the case. Fred says Chase Young is going to commit a homicide on Cousins. I thought Chase was good today. I know the numbers aren't going to show it, right? They're just not going to stand out. But I thought Chase had a lot of opportunities to make a big play, faced a couple double teams here and there. I think that big play is coming soon, and it might happen against a guy like Kirk Cousins because against Bryce Young has some wiggle to him. He can get out of a situation. Kirk Cousins, I find myself to be a decent athlete. I would not be surprised if I could beat Kirk Cousins in a foot race. So I think that Bryce made it a little tougher for guys like Chase Young today. Kirk Cousins, going to be tough. Forgive says, Chris, AK also cashed my 2.3K ticket with that touchdown. That's awesome. I actually was thinking about that. After the halftime show when you mentioned it, when he got in the end zone, I was like, oh man, that's perfect. And Mendoza says, I don't care that it's the Panthers. We needed this win after all the BS from last year. God bless Clint Kubiak. Fuck Pete Carmichael. And the New Orleans Saints are back, baby. It feels like that, man. And I'm going to be honest. Regardless of what happens next week, because we'll get to next week when next week comes around. We're going to enjoy the now, and we're going to enjoy it on Monday for a Victory Monday. And then Tuesday starts, new week. And we could talk about the Cowboys. But what I will say is that Cowboys game to me will not affect how I view this season. If anyone who listened to the preview show for Saints Panthers, I said, if you're going to be a team that surprises people this year, you got to win week 1. That's checked. Can you split Cowboys, Eagles? We'll see. They'll have an opportunity. And then after, okay, Falcons, you got to defend. You got to defend that ability there against them. Can you get a win against them? And then either split with them in the Bucs or win both, lose to the Chiefs. That's the way to do it. So all that's still on the cards. So I don't care about, like I said, I don't care that it's just the Panthers. The Saints got to win this type of game to put themselves in a good spot. They did just that. Love the way they looked. Margaret says, great game, even though it was a bad team. Kamara was great. Taylor was great. And Carr ran the ball. Holy cow. What is happening? Carr looks pretty mobile today. And again, Carr's been a decent athlete. I think that's what made it so frustrating about him just kind of looking like a statue at times last year. Granted, was facing a lot of injuries. You got to get him off that, out of the pocket a little bit sometimes. Get him rolling out. Saints did that today. And I think that was big for him. So love the way that Derek Carr played. You mentioned Alontae Taylor. I'm sure other people are going to mention it. Alontae Taylor was special today. I mean, first off, he's going to lead the league in sacks at this rate. He had 3 sacks. I mean, that is exceptional. But yeah, shout out to him. Shout out to Derek Carr. Shout out to the whole team. They all balled out. Paulson Debo balled out too. So many guys to mention. It would take a while if we gave everyone their fair due. Paul says, Alvin hasn't looked as good in a while. This offense is made for him. It is. Totally agree about that. Totally agree. Bayou Boys 504 says, I told y'all Carr wasn't the problem. He was never the problem. I think Carr last year was a symptom of the problem. The main problem was Pete Carmichael. If we're just going about offense, put everything else aside. Put all the drama, the defense, put everything aside. The problem last year was Pete Carmichael. And to your point, Carr was the quarterback for Pete Carmichael. He was a symptom of the problem. The actual problem was Pete Carmichael. So, and again, one game sample size, but just from a fan who's just watching the games, look at what we saw today from the offense and then go back to what we saw last year. It is like night and day between an actual team that knows what they're running and knows what type of mindset they want to establish and one that had no identity. Identity crisis with Pete Carmichael all season long. Ryan says, who dat, baby? Absolutely, who dat? And again, that dome rocking. So a lot of people didn't want to go into the season. Not a lot of hype. That dome was deafening today. Aaron says, was walking through the dome and haven't heard that much excitement, enthusiasm since 2018. Unreal atmosphere, and this team as a whole looked great. They absolutely did. And just looking at the schedule, guys, that dome better be rocking. You got Eagles coming in there in 2 weeks. What a statement that would be if you could beat the Eagles there and give your team a lot of confidence moving forward. Tobias says, I'm still worried about wide receiver. Think we need help there. I agree. But I think for the Saints this year, now don't get me wrong, it all hinges on Olave and Shaheed. All of it, especially at receiver. But this offense, is going to be built for them to run the football. That is going to be the MO. And on the days where their run game gets shut, you're going to see this offense will struggle, and it'll be unfortunate, and we won't have as much fun as we're having right now talking about a 47-10 victory. We won't. But they are built through the run, and that is going to be the battle. If they can win in the trenches more games than most with running the football and establishing the tone that way, us Saints fans are going to be just fine. But I agree with you, Tobias. The wide receiver room it's lacking talent. Ryan says, Loomis better give Alante and AK contract extensions before the end of the season, or they might walk away. I think Alante will eventually get paid. I really do. As for AK, we'll see. I'd like for them to find a deal that's fair for both sides because he is getting older, but he is by far their best running back. We'll see. Maybe they work something out. You never know. Still time for them to get it done. Still time. Rachel says, Jamal Williams even scored. Yeah, I tweeted before the game that I think he was going to score today. I didn't anticipate it happening during a blowout like this, but definitely happy that he got in the end zone. I thought even he looked decent at times today. And on that run, great blocking. And even for Jamal, a guy who I rip a lot, I say he has no burst, finished with 11 carries for 38 yards. So not terrible at all. Ryan says Kubiak was the best signing of the offseason. Totally agree. Fred says at this point, we got to see what we can get for Lattimore before the trade deadline. Love the guy, but he can't stay on the field. He did suffer a hamstring injury. His hamstrings have been a problem for his entire career coming into the NFL. Luckily for the Saints, they haven't been that big of an issue. It was more of an issue at Ohio State. The Lattimore situation is tough, though. It all, to me, comes down to value. If you don't get great value for him, you might as well keep him. And then next year, you figure it out. And I do believe this is Lattimore's last season in New Orleans. I feel pretty confident about that because I think for the Saints, you drafted Kool-Aid. You want to see Kool-Aid McKinstry play. You think Adebo can be the guy, and I thought Adebo played well again today, and you got to pay him after this year, you got to pay him. So he's got to get an extension. I think the right move might be you drafted Kool-Aid, you want to see what he can do. You got a guy in Adebo who you know can play well, and Alante today played great. So I think this is going to be his last year. I just don't know if you trade him right now. I just can't see, the trade value being great for him. Kanan says, who dat? Aaron says, was looking forward to this post-game live since the first quarter after we went up. I thought the same thing too. I will say, when you have a beatdown like this, it does maybe take the mystery element of what's the post-game live stream vibe going to be like, but I don't care. I take this in a heartbeat every single time. And I always say this, like for fans, when you walk into a season and everything hinges on Super Bowl or bust, it could kind of deflate the room because you're never going to have fun until they win the Super Bowl. But the way the NFL is constructed, to me, it's all about winning more than losing. And if we got more good weeks and bad weeks as Saints fans this year, that's what I want. And so far, we got one excellent week, and we'll see what happens next week when that comes around. Kofi says, I trust Kubiak, man. I really do. So do I. I think he knows what he's doing schematically. It's just so much better than what they had last year. So much better. Ryan says, hope no team wants to steal Kubiak and sign him as a head coach next year. I think it is possible if they do this well, obviously he's gone. But what I would say about Kubiak is you take a job like New Orleans because you know if you fix that offense, you are going to be someone's head coach. And that's just the truth of the matter. And if you lose Kubiak, you got to hope that you got someone in the building that you could just promote and be the next guy. That's what you got to hope. And I'm not saying that's going to happen. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. But don't kid yourself. Kubiak took this job knowing, man, if I do my thing, I'm going to be head coach. Paul says Dallas Cowboys next week in Dallas is the measuring stick. Yes and no. I agree that it will definitely be a much bigger test. No doubt about that. But if they lose that game and then come back around and beat Philly, I'm still feeling good about this team. Max says, who dat? Love it. Steve says, who dat? Aaron says, Darren Rizzi is an unbelievable special teams coordinator. Best in the league. He's fantastic, man. Ryan says, celebrating Atlanta losing to Sam Darnold when everyone was saying Atlanta was going to be the best in the NFC South. I think you mean Justin Fields, because that's who was starting for Pittsburgh today. They were supposed to start Russell Wilson. He had a calf injury. Justin Fields starts for the Steelers. What's crazy about the Falcons thing is the Falcons lost a game today where their opponent, and I just want to double check just to make sure I'm right about this. I'm pretty sure that I am right about it, but I just want to double check. Yeah, they lost to an opponent today who didn't score a touchdown. It was all Chris Boswell field goals for the Steelers, which is freaking crazy. Bayou Boys 504 says, elite of Carr to stand in there and make that throw to Shaheed. It was a great throw. Excellent throw, tough throw. That's what you want to see. It doesn't get better than that. It really doesn't. Ryan says, Foster really looked great today. Had a few great catches. He did. You know, how about the tight end room? You know what? I want to give them some credit. Juwan Johnson and Foster Moreau both had a touchdown. Both had multiple catches. Foster ended up having 4 catches for 43 yards and a touchdown. Juwan ended up having 2 catches for 26 yards and a touchdown. Kudos to them, because that is a room that I did not feel good about with the Saints. And yet, they come out there and they play really well. So, really, really kudos to this tight end room for the way they played, because I was not confident in them at all. And then they did their thing today. Forgive says, I really think DA took a large chunk of Bryce Young's confidence. I think Panthers will be looking for a new quarterback after the season, and Bryce will become one of the biggest busts. He looks shocked. He doesn't look good, guys, at all. At all. 13 of 30. That's not going to get it done. No touchdowns through the air. He did have the rushing touchdown and the 2 picks. He looks lost. And to me, it's not, I don't care about the undersized thing, right? Because that was the big conversation, right? He's a small guy. But like Kyler's had success as a small guy. We know damn well Drew Brees had a Hall of Fame career as a smaller quarterback. Baker Mayfield's had a good career as a smaller quarterback. Russell Wilson has had a borderline Hall of Fame career as a smaller quarterback. Bryce Young, though, the inaccuracy is bad. Like, he missed on so many throws today. And a lot of them were in moments where, all right, yeah, there's pressure coming. But you got to decide if you're going to take that hit or not. You know, I gave Derek Carr credit. He decided on the 59-yard touchdown pass, I'm going to take a shot, but I'm going to deliver one to Shaheed. Bryce, you making business decisions, it's not going to work out for you. It's not. Not in this NFL. In college, it might work. It's not going to work in the pros. And again, still early to make the decision on him yet. But if you have a meter, right, and you're deciding whether or not it's leaning towards he gets a third year or the Panthers go, this guy is not good and we have to draft another quarterback, it's leaning towards the latter. Because he has not, through one game of this season and all we had last year, he looks lost. That's the best way to put it. Ryan says, even Jamal got a real touchdown today. Hopefully he builds on that through the season. I hope so. Aaron says, is Foster okay? Saw him a little banged up after that reception. I did see that as well. I haven't seen an update yet on him. Could search for one now to see if they gave anything on Foster Moreau, but I have not seen anything yet on his status. I thought someone said it was a concussion, but let's see. Yeah, all right, so found it here. Dennis Allen said Foster Moreau has a concussion and he will be in protocol. So that stinks. That part absolutely stinks for Foster Moreau. And it's worse because, it's worse anyway because you're probably losing for next week. But obviously, when you have a good game like that and he played a big role in the offense, you don't want to see a guy like that miss time at all, especially for concussion. El Mendoza says sometimes a team just needs a game like this to build off of, and this was a perfect game to do it. Also, Godspeed to Bryce Young. Couldn't agree more. Paul says Bryce Young is bust. Max says, I loved when Carr and Horn were chirping at each other before the 2-minute warning. I like that too. I like that fire from Derek Carr. That's what we want to see. That great competitive edge from him today. And again, one game is not going to win people over. And I said this weeks ago. For some people, he's never going to win them over. Like, they've made the decision they don't like Derek Carr. And to each their own, right? If you don't like Derek Carr, you don't like Derek Carr. There's nothing wrong with that. But if Derek's going to win over the Who Dat Nation, he's got to win a lot of games. Today's a good start, but he's got to do more. Chris says, we need to find a way to win 2 out of the next 3. Assuming we lose to the Chiefs, that'll put us at 3-2 after our first 5 games. Yes, understood. But I will say, to your point though, Chris, if they don't win 2 out of the next 3, let's say they win 1 out of the next 3, but then they go out and beat the Bucs and they're 3-3 through 6 games, they'll still be okay. I promise you, they'll still be okay. Because then they're going to have games against opponents where, from a talent perspective, the Saints will be able to hang. Raiders, Chargers, who else am I thinking of? Broncos, they'll be able to hang with those teams. You play the Panthers again later on, you'll be able to hang with them. Giants, be able to hang with them. So just get through at least 500 through 6 games. And obviously starting off 1-0, way to do it. Ryan says Juwan with the block punt. Juwan was, again, good on special teams, good on offense today. Bayou Boys 504. Bryce Young was always going to be mediocre. Saban's offense is made to make mediocre quarterbacks look elite. They never go to the league and be elite. That's fair. I mean, Mac Jones is kind of flamed out. Bryce obviously not off to a good start, so not wrong. Wesley says, what a win. I haven't felt this good watching a Saints game since 2019. That is fair. And I agree with you on that. I honestly do. You know? I really agree with that. Aaron says Derek Carr looked completely different in the red zone today. He did. The offense as a whole looked different in the red zone. I'm glad you brought that up, by the way. That offense in the red zone had purpose. You felt confident in them scoring, whereas last year, it was like, well, if they don't use QB power with Taysom, they're not getting in the end zone. Where this year, ran the football well. Derek Carr extended some plays. Just literally exactly what you want to see. Perfect from them. Ryan says, Rashid was offensive MVP and Alante was defensive MVP. Honestly, don't hate that. Shaheed, 70-plus yards, touchdown, big return. And then Alante today, pass breakup, 3 sacks, believe 5 tackles. He was all over the field. New Daylight Present says, shout out to Rizzy, honestly. Absolutely. He was tremendous. Wesley says, it's 1 week and it was the Panthers, but who dat baby? I'm enjoying this win. Can't tell me anything today. That's the right approach. Don't let anyone tell you any different. Ryan says, Alante earned a new contract. Hope they keep letting him rush off the edge. Yeah, I hope so too. I think that adds a little bit of a different element to it. And the plays where he had those big sacks for the Saints defense on 3rd down, there was no chance for Bryce Young to get out. It wasn't like Bryce Young made a mistake. Or, well, you could argue he didn't pick him up, so maybe that's the mistake. But it's not like Bryce Young was sitting there forever. He had no shot. Alante was closing in fast. That can add a new element to this defense. Not that they needed to add any new elements, but if you're going to be a competitor this year for the Saints, you need your defense to take over. And to have Alante come out and do what he did, I think that could add some fire to this defense. Hale Mendoza says, ask the Falcons how they feel about special teams. I mean, special teams freaking matters. It gets so swept under the rug. But a lot of teams win or lose games off special teams. I mean, the freaking Super Bowl last season had 2 50-plus yard field goals. So special teams matters. It absolutely matters. It just doesn't get talked about because it's not sexy like offense or, certain defensive plays. It's just not as exciting, but it absolutely matters. New Daylight Presents says, shout out to Bryce Young. I hope he stays QB1 for the Panthers forever. I agree. I hope he gets a lifetime extension. Mello says, we looking good. That's for sure. Wesley says, here's to hoping we finally found that combo that works for DA. Leave the offense up to Clint while he handles the defense. If this results in wins, that's all that matters. Amen to that. Amen to that. Because to your point, it is all that matters. Having an offense that can complement Dennis Allen's defense that when it is humming is one of the better units in the league. That's what you need. That's the secret sauce for them. Blue J 44 says, appreciate the win, but want to see what we look like against an actual quarterback. Understand that. I won't go against that, but I still think the defense can play well. And I think we'll see, though. To your point, I mean, next couple quarterbacks they face, Dak, Jalen Hurts, Kirk Cousins, Mahomes, Baker Mayfield. So they're going to get quarterbacks to face. And how they handle those, we shall see. But they're going to get tested. And I'm very excited to see how they handle that challenge, especially the next 2 weeks against NFC East teams, 2 teams that made the playoffs last year. I'm excited to see how that all develops. I really am. Jerry G says, where them Choklanta fans at now? Probably in hiding for today. Not their day. Like I mentioned before, when you lose a game against a team that didn't score a single touchdown, that's crazy. Nuts statistic. Ed says, can't lie, last 6 games, 5-1. Go look at the numbers. Yep. The numbers have been good. Quarterback's been good the last, if you take the last stretch of the 2023 season and now, obviously the now is what matters. But first game for Derek, great. And it's an encouraging start. No doubt about it. To Jared G's point, 47 points. Obviously the shout out goes to Clint Kubiak and what they were able to do. Trey Gift says Falcons officially in last place in the NFL. Technically they are. Yeah. I mean, they share it with a lot of people, but that's a pretty rough loss for them today. Ed says AK looked energized. He did. And to that point, Mello says pay Alvin. I think that's going to be a very popular take over the next couple of weeks. Can't say I disagree with it because Alvin did look fresh today. Ambrosini says, Clint Kubiak, you can have my kids. You have saved me. If the Saints offense goes out there and balls out against the Cowboys, I do think the takes are going to be wild. I'm all for it, by the way, but they are going to be wild. It really is. It's going to be fun to see. And I'm excited. I really am excited to see what happens if that's what goes down. So let's see what we have left in the comments. Bringing it over to Hale Mendoza says, I really hope we keep Alante long-term. I think DA found a niche for him coming off the edge with a blitz. Yeah, I think that could give them a new element. No doubt about that. I think for Alante, it's big for him too. I think for him, when you go from outside, you get moved to the slot and you struggle the way you did last year. I almost felt like for him, it was a mentality thing. Focus goes down. Maybe you don't love that role. When you start to give them more to do and he's dominating in the slot, and then you also decide at the same time that you're also going to use him as a rusher off the edge, maybe that keeps him a little bit more engaged. I think that it really will help. So to Melo's point, should we keep Taylor blitzing off the edge when you're in those situations where you think it's advantageous to do so? Yeah. Now, you're not going to do it as much as you did today because you're not going to verse quarterbacks like Bryce Young who don't see it coming. But I do think against certain quarterbacks where you feel like the time is right to dial up that blitz, yeah, DA should absolutely let him loose. Today, it just so happened where, Bryce Young was seeing ghosts. You could take advantage. You send the house. Forgive says Bryce Young is also a huge problem, not just the guys around him. Yeah, Bryce has not been good. The system around him hasn't been great. Players around him haven't been great. He hasn't been great. That for me is huge. For them, you traded so much capital. And for him to look like this, pretty tough. Donald says, was a good run, fella. Let's tank now. No, sir. But to another comment that you did make, and it is, valid. The real test will be in 4 to 5 weeks when there is tape on our tendencies. Don't disagree with that. What I will say about the Saints, though, is if they're running the football with purpose, they're moving guys in the ground game, you can have all the tape in the world. If your guys are getting beat against the Saints 5 in the trenches, there's nothing you really can do. But I do agree. We will see more about the Saints, no doubt about it. We should enjoy this one right now, though. It is a division win. It was a beatdown. They were playing modern offense. But yeah, we'll definitely learn more over the next couple of weeks. There's no doubt about it. Paul says Clint will be gone next year if the offense keeps putting up these numbers. I mean, yeah, I don't expect to put 47 points up again this season, maybe against the Panthers when they play them again. But look, if the Saints are averaging in the high 20s, then yes, I do think that he'll be in great shape. Go get a coaching job, no question about that. Trey Gift says Cam looked like he had some juice again. Yep. There's no doubt about that part. I mean, what he was able to do and the motor that he has is sensational. And I want to bring that up, by the way, for Cam. At this stage in his career, it's so easy to kind of just collect your checks and slack off. He doesn't do that. He doesn't do that by a long shot. And I salute him, man. He's a baller. Derek says it's a good thing we won. No Taysom and Olave touchdown killed my parlay. I'd be pissed. Look, I always say, right? Totally get why people place parlays. I place them myself. But when it comes to the Saints, you tell me win my parlay, win the Saints. rather take a Saints win. That said, if you could have both, obviously, if you have your cake and eat it too, you do it. But Saints win today, winning by that much, you take it. El Mendoza says, speaking of Chase Young, that D-line with Chase, Brzee, Jordan, and Granderson is a good starting four. It is. It really is. And I think Chase is going to have his moment at some point where he's going to have a huge game. I think it's coming. Japanese Hercules says, today's MVP is Alante Taylor. Thank God Pete Carmichael is gone. Clint is the man. Also, LOL, Falcons lost today. Yes, they did. Donald says, Lattimore injured, ? Lattimore suffered a hamstring injury. He spoke to reporters after the game, though, and when asked about his hamstring, he said, in quotes, I'm good. So hopefully that gives us some reassurance. But hey, Kool-Aid came in, made some nice plays. So shout out to him. Max says, Jamal Williams with a 2-game touchdown streak dating back to last year. Yeah, that is very true. And, shout out to him as well. I still feel like he's missing the juice needed. But I want to give him credit. I thought he looked better today. I really thought he looked better. Let's see what we got. Melo saying DC QB rating 142.5. It's about as good as it gets, folks. It's about as good as it gets. Ambrosini says that touchdown was great, but the run game had me tearing up seeing my O-line actually existent. It was exceptional. And I think for the Saints, towards the end of the game, I don't know if you guys remember when the Saints played the Bills in 2017. I might have the year wrong. But when they just kept running the football and the Bills couldn't stop it, Saints probably could have done that all game today, and they would have been just fine. Obviously it helps that Derek Carr played really well. The passing attack was working. But if they wanted to just run the football all day today, they probably could have got around that. They really could have got around that. Gabriel says Rashid Shaheed is more valuable to our success than Chris Olave. Not saying Olave isn't a great player, but Shaheed's speed and run after catch ability is something we can't replicate. I don't know. I think both are equally important. I know Olave today, people are going to look at the stats and be like, man, disappointing game. But I think Olave is going to have one of those games where he explodes. Not physically, statistically. And it is going to be fun to watch. Today just wasn't his day in the game plan, and that's fine. That's totally fine. But he's going to get his opportunity. Donald says, can't imagine being a Panthers fan right now. Fuck. Yeah, got to be the worst spot. Your team's terrible. They don't really have a great support system at the moment. Draft capital is not what you needed, because that's the problem. When you win 2 games last year, you're supposed to get the number 1 pick. They didn't have the number 1 pick because they traded it away. And that part's just so tough. It really is tough. Gabriel says Pete Carmichael should be aggressively arrested and have to watch 2023 game film for a year straight. Goddamn, what a beautiful offensive game today. What a punishment that would be, right? Going back to watch the 2023 Saints. I'm never doing that again. Definitely not. Ambrosini says it should rehire Pete Carmichael and fire him again one more time. Someone said that during the halftime show, and that one cracked me up. I'd be for it, honestly. I would be for it, Victor says Juwan blocking that punt was a page out of Hill's book. Tight end coach needs a raise. It was pretty awesome. Rizzy's reaction was pretty good too. Like, he's excited, but then he's telling everyone to get the hell out of the way so they don't touch the football. Pretty good sequence for him. And shout out to Juwan. Remember months ago he had the foot injury and we're wondering whether he's going to play this year. Has a touchdown and a block punt today. Good start for him. Gabriel says, LA Saints fan here. I'm going to be so damn obnoxious at work tomorrow, shitting on all the haters and non-believers. P.S. 5 hours ago, I was a hater and non-believer. Don't matter what you were 5 hours ago. What matters is that the Saints won 47-10, and you're feeling good because of it. That's what matters. Dustin says, hopefully they'll do this to Dallas next week. I sure hope so. Max says Young was an inch away from not having a touch. That was crazy, man. Had he fumbled right there, he almost had the fumble at the goal line. Mingo fumbled, and he was lucky that his foot was out of bounds. That part saved him a little bit too. So I think that for the Panthers, what do you take away from today's game and get excited about? Even your good moments had some scary instances in there, Forgive says Bryce plays like he's still in college. He still thinks he could be calm in the pocket like in Alabama. Yeah, that doesn't fly, especially against the Saints defense, but NFL defense as a whole. Watching the Washington Bucks game right now, Bucks offense not getting into the end zone so far might be good for us down the road. Bucks got new offensive system now. No more Dave Canales, who's now the head coach of the Panthers. And last year, Saints lost to the Bucks early in the season. They got their ass kicked. And the Saints went back to Tampa later in the season. They kicked Tampa's ass. I can see the Saints having their way with Baker in that offense if they could get the pass rush going and limit the run game and make them one-dimensional, which is what they did the second time around. If they could do that again, they'll be fine. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But Tampa, to me, isn't a team that scares me. You know, I think they're going to be competitive this year. I don't expect Tampa to be a bad football team, but they don't scare me. I view them in the same class that I view the Saints. Trey Gift, Joe Burrow, the most overrated QB in the league right now? Question mark. All right, I will say it. I do think he is a little overrated. I think Joe Burrow is a great quarterback. So don't get me wrong. I do think he's a little overrated, though. But I don't know. I'm not going to go off one game to say that. 16-10 is not great. But the Bengals historically start slow. And you know what? It's kind of tough when you got two wide receivers in contract holdouts in situations. I know they're at practice and they're in the games. I get that. But Higgins and Jamar's situation hasn't been great. I think the Bengals roster's kind of, I don't want to say mid. They have good players, but I don't think it's a really, really talented group at the moment. I think that they have some flaws. So I don't want to put it all on Burrow. I do think to some extent, though, Burrow gets a lot of credit that a lot of other guys get criticism for, and I don't understand it. Like Joe Burrow is classified as a winner, but Josh Allen's not. And yeah, Joe Burrow's made a Super Bowl, but he didn't win that Super Bowl. I don't know. Again, I love Joe B, so I don't want it to come off like I'm a Burrow hater. Burrow's a great quarterback. But Joe does get more love and grace than a lot of good quarterbacks. I'll put it that way. Hav C735 says, excited to see what the defense looks like against Mahomes. Me too. What a fun matchup that's going to be. And it could end really bad. But we'll see. I think that's going to be a fun one for sure. Jake says, secondary is elite. Willie Gay and Chase Young should be able to hold mobile QBs like Hurts. Bryce Young was absolutely horrible, but even good QBs will have a tough time against this defense. When they're humming like this, yeah. I definitely think that this defense, regardless of who they face, when they're playing to this extent, they'll be fine. And Mendoza says, honestly, Zach Taylor's always been suspect to me. He's felt like one of those coaches that gets carried by the talent of the team and not by his coaching. I agree. I agree with that. Alex says, look like the old Saints with that strong running game they did. And to Forgive's point, highest scoring offense in the league at the moment. I mean, it's 1 week, so that will drop down. But 47 points is not something to just ignore. Regardless of the opponent, 47 points is 47 points. You know? I mean, Jake Haener played. Didn't expect to see Jake Haener in the game. So you know they were doing well. Alex says, looks like Kubiak knows how to spread the ball around, especially with Foster, Juwan, and Taysom. Was excited about the depth of that position going into last season, even more so after today. If that offense plays like this all year, Kubiak could be a hot name in the coaching carousel next offseason. Yeah, I think he will. If he keeps it up. Doesn't have to play they don't have to play at this level. But I think that to some degree, if they just look like decent on offense for the most part and creative, but maybe the personnel is just not great, he'll get a look. Jose says, who do you think had a good under-the-radar game? That's a good question. That's a really good question. Who do I think had a good under-the-radar game? I'll go back. I mean, I don't want to say under the radar because he's so damn good. So I'm not going to say DeMario because I think DeMario in the stat sheet, you're not going to see it, but he was all over the football field. I'll say I think Paulson Debo played really well and won't get, talked about as much as, let's say, Alante did because of the 3 sacks or let's say Jordan Howden because of the interception. But I thought Paulson Debo played really, really well. And Debo to me he's an ascending player. He's the type of player you pay now. And when you see the contract, you might be like, oh, that's an overpay. But you're paying him because of what you think he's going to become, not because of what he is right now. And I want to give Debo his props. I think he's an outstanding player. And just remember his career. Really good rookie season, was injured second year and did not play well. Third year, great. This is his 4th year now. If he plays well again this year, the tendencies favor him being a good player more than anything, Saints Super Bowl odds have dropped from 10,000 to 6,500 to 1. Okay. Some promise there. Gabriel says, I think Penning and Fuaga's confidence will play a big factor in their success, and games like this could do so much, especially for Penning. They could. And confidence is key. Reps is key. Just getting that repetition in for Penning and Fuaga is going to be so paramount for their progress. There's no question about that. Evan says Panthers already in midseason form. Yeah, I'd start looking at mock drafts if I was a Panthers fan. That might seem like an overreaction, but I don't really care. I feel like it's warranted. Gabriel says, love Cam Jordan. He's number 2 all-time first, but he's a third down defensive tackle and backup defensive end at this stage, consistently in position to get a sack, but he just doesn't have the shiftiness to go against non-statures. That part's fair. Let's see how he plays the rest of the season, but I do think he'll still give them some juice. How much? We'll see. Donald says Saints need to move off some older players. They will eventually. It'll be a slow and steady progress, but they will. Dustin says, do you think Sean Payton's going to be cheered or booed at the building when he comes back into town? I'm going to say booed. I'm going to say booed. That's just my prediction for the moment. I think that there's going to be some people that are going to have sour grapes over the way he left, and understandably so. So I'm going to say booed. D23 says, I saw a big-time effort from Chase Young. He just needs a bit more help from the inside, and he'll eat. I agree. Margaret says, we did take a few stupid penalties today. Penalties are going to happen for the Saints. There weren't any that were like super costly. And yeah, look, 10 penalties, a lot of penalties, a lot of holding ones. And that part's not great. But I do think for the Saints, it's fine today. You live with it. You got to get better. You understand that. But there weren't any that were like so head scratching that they were frustrating. I think some of the holding penalties in the run game are going to happen, especially when you're going to run the football as much as the Saints are going to run the football this year. Got to learn, though. Got to learn. And they will. Fred says, not Saints related, but Seahawks throwbacks are absolute fire. Yeah, they look ridiculously good. Ridiculously good. Zilla says, what's the shake on Lat? You think he's in another jersey to end the season? No, I do think he's in another jersey next season. I think he stays this season. I could be wrong, but that's where I'm at with him. Donald says, DeMario's a menace. He is. Alante looking like CD Deuce. A little different players. I think Alante's better than CD Deuce at the top of his game. I think he could do more than CD Deuce. I really feel that way. Just got to stay focused. And if he is, then he'll be a great player for them. And Mendoza says, non-Saints related, Sam Darnold had a really solid game today. He was super efficient. So I think he started off the game like 10 for 10. Vikings looked pretty good. And the Giants on the flip side, pretty shit. D23 says, DA is a great developer of DBs in all fairness to him. He is. That is the key to him. Devion says, we need a name for the Kamara Taysom backfield. We do. If someone's got one, let me know. I'm going to start thinking of them, but I don't got anything right now. But they probably need one. Angel Evan says 40 Burger was not on my bingo card. Wasn't on mine either. But then once they got to 30, I wanted them to get to 50. Dark says Blake Groupie was nice today. He was outstanding for them. Gabriel says, my girl is going to have to endure a full week of we are so fucking back and me flexing on strangers and loved ones until we inevitably have a bad game. LOL. Love that for her. Yeah, look, when the Saints win like they did today, the vibes are high, man. The vibes are extremely high. Naming my firstborn son Taysom, and he's just going to have to get over it. Awesome name. Don't change it up. Space African Jesus says, I've been a doomer about this season before, but something about dropping 47 against a division rival in week 1 makes me say, fuck it, we're back. Even if it was against Emmanuel Lewis and the Panthers. Yeah, like you said, it's the way you win. If the Saints came out today and they won 20-17, it kind of feels like last year, you know? When you win the way you win today, it feels different. It feels different. D23 says, seeing Olave and the wide receivers on the sideline celebrating with Carr was massively heartwarming. All smiles. Totally agree. Henya says, people don't realize that the Saints running backs don't get as much mileage as running backs in other systems or on other teams. Kamara is about 30 years old with 28-year-old legs without passengers to be 27-year-old legs. I understand what you mean. You're not wrong about that. You're not. It comes down to like college kids, right? Who's got the most mileage on them, and that factors into the age. Fred says, a thumbs down, Sally, our DBs are doing this season is next level. I think we're going to see a lot of cool celebrations this year. I've said before, I think this defense can be top 5. I really do. Again, they got to get the pass rush going, and once they do that, it'll all trickle through. But I think this will be a top 5 unit. So you like that celebration, Fred, you better get ready for a lot more. Space African Jesus says, oh yeah, Falcons lost 18-10 to Justin Fields. No touchdowns for the Steelers. And they beat the Falcons. Love that. Zilla says Zoom and Doom. Oh, the nickname for Taysom and Kamara. I can rock with that. Helmandel says, what are your predictions for the evening games? So right now, pull up the schedule real quick. So we got Broncos, Seahawks. I think the Seahawks are going to come back and eventually win. Could be wrong about that one. I just feel like they'll make enough plays late in the game. I think Geno will get it going. So I'll go Seattle. Dallas looks a lot better right now than Cleveland, so I'd say Dallas. I could see the Commanders making a little bit of a comeback, but they got to get it going. Jaden's got to get it going too. He's done really well with his legs, but nothing with his arm yet. So we'll see, but Bucks will probably win that one. Raiders, Chargers. I'm going to say Chargers come back and win that. Rams, Lions. I'll take the Lions tonight. Jets, Niners tomorrow. I'll take the Niners in a close one. I think both primetime games are going to be close. So should be fun. Should absolutely be fun. So before I get into our closing argument of the day, and I'll get to that in just a minute, I want to get a quick word from one of our sponsors, DraftKings Sportsbook.
NFL Week 1 is here, and a new season means new ways to get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like picking a player to score a touchdown. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the best place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code BOOT. That's code BOOT, B-O-O-T, for new customers to get $250 in bonus bets when you bet just $5 and get 1 month of NFL Plus Premium on us, only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in New Hampshire, Oregon, and Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/FT Ball. NFL Plus Premium offer available only to new and former NFL Plus subscribers. Additional NFL Plus Premium terms at nfl.com/terms.
Once again, thank you to DraftKings Sportsbook for being part of the program. We greatly appreciate it. So during that break just now, I saw in the comments, Fred said in question, are we this year's Lions? And I'm going to end it with that comment because I love that comment. And that's going to bring us to our closing argument presented by Scott Fickner, Injury Lawyers. As I mentioned at the top of the show, you give him a call at 504-500-1111. For our closing argument today, he mentioned the Lions in that comment. Are the Saints this year's Lions? I don't know. It's too early to tell. And it's one game. But what I will say about this New Orleans Saints for today, in this one game sample size, is we saw a unit in terms of playing complementary football. Defense was swarming, 2 interceptions, forced fumble, special teams was outstanding. Blake Grupe making 4 field goals, 2 of them being from 50-plus yards. Jawan Johnson blocking a punt, Rashid Shaheed with an excellent return. And then the offense, having an identity, establishing the run, 180 yards on the ground. Derek Carr having 3 touchdown passes and only 4 incompletions. Alvin Kamara looking like the elite running back we always know he could still be if he has the right coordinator putting him in the right spots, which Clint Kubiak absolutely did. So for the Saints, again, I know it's one game and it's tough to go all in after one, but this didn't look like last year's Saints team, and it didn't look like the one from 2 years ago. And it doesn't mean that they're going to be 10-7, 11-6, whatever you may want them to be of your highest projection. But what I'll end with saying is that for the Saints this year, we saw the blueprint. It's going to be all about execution moving forward and how you do it against the Cowboys, the Eagles, Bucks, Falcons, better opponents. I get that. But the blueprint is there, and the coaching staff is going to be better. So now for the Saints, it's all about making it happen and playing that complementary style and putting guys like Kamara, putting guys like Carr in those advantageous positions for them to do their job. Because when you do it, we saw they can actually make things happen. So we'll see how the Saints move forward. But what an amazing start for them, 47-10, beating the Panthers, getting to 1-0. And now we get to enjoy the next 24 hours celebrating this win, and then we'll turn the page to week 2. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in to this edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. Thank you for leaving your comments, your likes, all your thoughts. You guys are the absolute best. I can't wait to talk with you guys again next week when they play the Cowboys. We'll have another halftime show and post-game show, and you get that all here on the Straight Up Saints podcast, the destination for the Who Dat Nation.